So today I'm going to be doing a thrift flip. I actually went to the thrift store, op shop, whatever you want to call it, on Monday and I got a few things. First we have this thing, this dress, and it's got this little ruffle on the bottom, and I'm thinking I'm going to turn it into a cute little green lace skirt. I don't know if you call this green or blue. It's like kind of just like teal, maybe. This is what the lace looks like. And it is a stretch as well, but I'm really excited to turn this into something. So this is the first thing I got. And the second thing I got was this like doona cover. It's like really massive. It's got like little koi fish on it and like little waves. And it's this blue color, and I can also use the inside as a lining for anything that I would make. I'm not too sure what I'm gonna make out of this one. Okay, so we're about to start the skirt. First I just cut off all of the original seams off of the dress so then I could get my flat pieces of fabric. I then held this against my body to know what angle I wanted to cut the skirt at and how long I wanted it to be. I then sewed up all of my side seams and pinned it on my body to make sure I had the correct fit. I put the lace on top of the lining layer to figure out what size it needed to be. I then pinned and stitched up the side seams of the lace overlayer. I then added my ruffle and forgot to ruffle it. This was probably the hardest part of the whole thing, just because the ruffle wanted to keep unruffling and I just couldn't really see what I was doing when I was sewing it on. And I also made the ruffle at an angle so it got longer the further it went down. I also put all my pins on the wrong side, so sewing this together was a nightmare. I then cut off all the extra and then added my lining underneath. I also made a little channel for the waistband to go in and covered this with the lace. I then stitched this on and left a small gap at the back so I could add my elastic in. I cut my elastic to the estimated circumference of my waist and then made sure to put the skirt on before I stitched it together. I then put 3 rows of stitching all along the waistband so then the elastic wouldn't roll and the fabric wouldn't bunch weirdly. It's now time to start the second thing, which this is actually really big, so I'm thinking I might be able to make 2 things with it, just because it is such a large doona cover. I don't even know how big it is. It does have a seam down the middle though. So starting off on my next thing, I just cut all of the seams off of the doona cover, separating the lining and the outer layer. This then allowed me to have 3 sheets of fabric because the top layer split into 2. The next fabric, and out of this, I think I'm going to be making something a bit like this. Then measuring my body and kind of guessing as I went, I cut out my pattern pieces. I sort of just guessed what this would look like while also looking at my reference picture to see where the seams should be. Got my mom to pin it on my body so then it would fit perfectly. I also made sure she left a little bit of room at the back so I could add a zipper in. She then set the camera up to film her cutting me out of the dress. The camera was facing down too low. I'll call your mom. I'm now just going to cut it all so it's more like to the right shape because as you can see here, there's a lot extra. And then I'm going to cut it out of the lining and then I guess stitch it all together. I then cut all the extra bits of fabric off, leaving enough around the pins for seam allowance, and I also cut off the bottom to make it a bit shorter. So I've taken all my pieces apart, all my pattern pieces, and I've put the like matching ones on top of each other. There's a bit of a difference because I cut them out, like I cut them while they were still joined together, so they're not even. I might try and even them up, but it might make it too small for me, but I might just try it and then pin it all back together. I don't know if I can do it for this one. I think this one's a bit far gone. That is like a big difference, so I might just have to cut this one panel out again. Last night I got up to here, so I sewed all of my seams together. Everything's sewn together now, and I did end up cutting out an extra pattern piece as well. I don't know if I showed that or not, just for the back. I then got my lining fabric and put all my pattern pieces out, which I did actually make a pattern for it just so it would be easier. And also if I wanted to ever make it again in the future, I had a pattern for it. So I laid this down and then cut all my pieces out and sewed it all together. And I did actually sew the wrong piece on the wrong part. I did the back panel on the side and then I had to take it off and then I pinned it on again and I accidentally pinned it good side to bad side, so my seams were now facing the wrong way. I then fixed this for the third time and pinned it correctly and sewed this together. So I now have my two pieces done. I've got my lining and my outer fabric here and I'm just gonna attach them good side to good side. Here we have the dress. It's looking cute. I've just top stitched this on. Hello, hello. I have no idea how to make sleeves, so I'm really delaying that. I think I'm just gonna cut it out and hope, which is what I've done with the whole thing. I still have another whole half and I'm not too sure what I'm gonna do with this. I could do a skirt, maybe like a little pleated skirt, and then I'd still have a lot left over. But the only things I have left to do is put the sleeves on, put the zip in, and then hem the bottom. I don't need two things out of this pattern, so I'm gonna dye the other one black. If it's not black in the reveal, it's because I ran out of time. It's Friday night. 10:23. Oh, and my music just disappeared. Oh, that's Shrek. Also, this is like a drawer of all my patterns I've made. Every time I make something, I turn it into a little pattern. So then I have it if I ever want to make it again, which I might use this one to make a top to match with the skirt. I have been doing this for so long now. It is now 2:52 in the morning. I've got the dress on. The only problem is I don't think I can get it off. So this is what I've done. I've got the sleeves on. I haven't like hemmed them, or I don't know where I want them to sit yet. I haven't hemmed the bottom. I still don't know how long I want it to be. I think I want it to be like here. And I've put the zipper in. It's now 10:30 on the 15th of February and now it's raining. But what I want to do is I've got this vest top pattern, and if you saw my short I did of everything I made in 2024, which was actually the first year I started sewing. I started sewing last year in March actually, so it's almost been a year. But I made this vest top and I actually love this top. I made it for the Niall Horan concert. I did actually have to take it in because I made it too big. But I want to make this out of this material, and I also want to make like a little pleated skirt to match. So I'm gonna quickly make those. I then got out my pattern that I made and pinned this down to my material so I could cut it out. And I didn't have any seam allowance on the pattern, so I made sure to add some as I was cutting it out. I then drew up my darts and sewed them, and then pinned and sewed my side seams together. I then did the exact same thing for the lining, cutting it out, leaving some extra space for seam allowance, and I left about 1 centimeter of seam allowance for all of my seams. And then I just drew in where my darts were, just marked them, and then pinned it and sewed it. And then I sewed the side seams together as well for the lining layer. After sewing my side seams and my darts together, I then put my outer layer and my lining layer good side to good side and pinned where all of my seams would line up. This then allows it so when you flip it back around the right way, all your seams are in the same places and it looks nice and neat. After sewing this together, I then sliced all of my curves just so then when I turned it inside out, it would sit nice and flat. However, before turning it inside out, I did also attach my shoulder seams together. Finished the top. I just sewed some buttons on it. I did accidentally make it a little big, but it's fine. It's nice and comfy, and it's a bit looser as well, so I can like wear tops under it if I want. Now I'm going to make a skirt. So the pleated skirt I made in this video was actually really ugly, so I ended up making this skirt. So I started by folding my fabric in half and laying the first dress I made on top of the fabric and cutting this shape out. This left me with 2 identical parts. I then cut a long rectangle for the waistband and cut this in half. I then stitched them good side to good side onto my skirt pieces. Putting my 2 skirt pieces good side to good side, I stitched down the sides and added a zipper. I then folded the bottom and stitched along. Turning this inside out left me with a skirt. So here is everything I've made. I did actually end up making this skirt this morning because I originally made a pleated skirt, but it didn't really work, so I just cut it up and just took the bottom of the dress I made and just used that shape to make the skirt. It is like my 2-set piece with the vest top that I made, and we've got the dress and the skirt, and that is everything I made. Time to put them on.